the stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That would be your Chickasaw native, your Chickasaw Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. Huge treat today. He got the first ever trainer award at the Cauliflower Alley Club. He's getting this year the Vern Gagne Trainer Award at the George Tragos Thesz Hall of Fame. He is in the Canadian Hall of Fame. He is Mr. Hall of Fame. He is Mr. Ron Hutchinson. We're going to talk to Ron about training. We're also going to talk about a very special friend of his, Sweet Daddy Siki, who passed away just last week, according to when we're taping this right now. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, gentlemen.
Hey, Ron, it's a true pleasure to have you on, and congratulations on the awards, the Hall of Fame awards. The Tragos Thesz Hall of Fame award is coming up in July this year up in Waterloo, Iowa. We have a great time up there. I know you have attended before, but the last several years you've been occupied, hadn't been able to make it. But you're coming this year to the award, and I hear you got a special announcement that we're going to let you disclose right here on this podcast about somebody special coming along with you, one of your trainees there. Kind of fill us in on that, Ron.
Do you want me to start right off the top with this blog?
Oh, man, right off the top,
right
brother.
Off the top. Okay, let's do it. I am so privileged and proud to announce that Adam Copeland, WWE superstar, AEW superstar, 16-time world champion, will be on hand in Waterloo and has generously agreed to come and induct me into the Waterloo Hall of Fame.
That is so good. Adam has shared an award that John has, our Thesz Award, and Adam has also received that award. So it's a pleasure. He was very well received at Waterloo. He's a beloved figure up there. So it's great to have him back. But man, more importantly, it's great for you to get the award that you deserve. This Gagne Award is for a special deal. We went through Greg Gagne, of course, to get his approval on using his dad's name and all that stuff. And he was wow, you're going to name an award after my dad? I'm so honored and everything. So, it has Greg's blessing, has the family's blessing up there. The entire Waterloo staff at the Dan Gable Museum, which is a spectacular place. One of John's favorite places that I know on the universe. It has so much wrestling history in there that we all love and respect, and we're looking so forward to July 18th, 19th, 20th this year to have you in our presence up there along with the Cope. I guess I should use the word
Cope. Yeah, I guess it's Cope. Yeah.
And to show everybody that I do know what's going on in the world today.
I put the bug in the ear of Beth Phoenix and Trish Stratus and Gail Kim, so God knows who's going to show up there. But
wow, you just had a plethora of stars, Hall of Famers, and herself up there that all rightfully deserve, and just about every Hall of Fame that we have in our business.
Yeah, I think anytime it's an honor to be considered by your peers, just not even inducted, but considered. People should look upon that as a great honor. Yeah. The fact that you're going to be inducted, it's just something a 10-year-old wrestling fan growing up in Toronto, me, would have never, ever dreamed that I would be amongst my peers in Waterloo. And Jerry, I'm looking forward to that Dan Gable beer. It'll be my first taste of it.
Oh, man, it's a good beer, 12% alcohol, too, so I don't know if you Canadians can handle it. It put me in a hospital.
Maybe just 24.
Yeah, it put me in the hospital for 3 days when I was up there.
We got medical insurance here. I got insurance.
It put Mr. Brisco almost under. We found out that the Iowa hospital was very good, but the Iowa food in the hospital was the worst thing that has ever been made in the history of the world. The food was
all the Canadian hospital said.
Ron, you mentioned something of that 10-year-old wrestling fan. Now, to tell us how a 10-year-old wrestling fan got hooked on wrestling and what wrestling was it, and kind of lead us along, what kind of sparked your curiosity about this business and what made you want to make a career out of it?
Well, I say 10 years old because 10 years old was the date that I went, talked my dad into taking my very first wrestling match. But I was actually a fan probably years before that. We used to go to my grandfather's. and it used to have it on the, it was black and white console television set, big one, heavy one. And he used to have that on Saturday afternoon. And I looked at that, and there were guys like the Sheik and the original Sheik out of Detroit, and Lord Athol Leighton and Sweet Daddy Siki, of course, and just caught my attention.
So you were getting Motor City Wrestling is basically
No,
what you're.
no, it was Maple Leaf Wrestling.
Maple Leaf, okay.
Promoted by Frank Tunney here in Toronto. Now, at that time, he had used a lot of the Detroit boys. We had Lou Klein up here, Lee Henning, guys like that. But Lord Athol Leighton, he was local. We had a lot of local guys too. Tiger Jeet Singh, Lord Athol Leighton, Waldo Von Erich. But so we had a lot of the Detroit guys come in, but the show was taped out of Hamilton, usually, in just outside of Toronto.
I worked an angle, and my first angle in Australia was with Lord Athol Leighton. And they brought me in. I was a young guy, of course, it's just fresh out of college, and I was getting abused by all the big heels there, King Curtis, Buddy Austin, Killer Kowalski, and all that. And
right.
Leighton did that old angle where I'm going to take the kid under my wing, So he and I teamed up for a little bit of time to fill out the end of his tour there. What a gentleman he was, and what a knowledgeable guy he was.
That's what I was just going to say. When he retired here, he ended up becoming a spokesperson for Bacardi Rums, and wow. I don't think they could have selected a better one. No, he was eloquent,
eloquent, yeah.
Looked the part. He looked like an English lord.
Yeah.
Australian lord, I guess.
Yeah. So you were watching all these guys on TV. What? Did all of a sudden your dad started taking you?
Nah, he wasn't a big wrestling fan, but I bugged him because coming up, I think it was April '74, at the Maple Leaf Gardens, they promoted a bout between the Sheik and the Crusader. If the Crusader lost, he would unmask. I said, Dad, we gotta go. I gotta see that. Crusader was my favorite wrestler. So he was managed by a guy named, and being in Florida, I think he's residing in Florida, so you may remember him now, but nobody hardly here remembers him. He was the Crusaders manager, and he's using the name John St. John. Little after that, he went, and I guess definitely, Jerry, you're going to know him because I believe he went into the Crockett territory and ended up refereeing under the name John Lang.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So the match was the Sheik and the Crusader, and if the Sheik won, the Crusader would unmask. Well, as fate would have it, the Crusader lost. He unmasked as Dewey Robertson, and the rest is history. I was hooked. I had to go back. The shows were about every 2 weeks then, sometimes every week, sometimes they'd go 3, but on average, every 2 weeks. And tickets were very cheap, even comparatively to how they are today. I think ringside at the time, $6, $7. We all complained when they went to $8.
Yeah.
But I was just hooked. It was great. Now, whether it was appropriate for 8, 9, 10-year-old boys, I don't know. But looking back in hindsight, I think when people ask me when my favorite era of wrestling is, I think I give the answer that I think any 10-year-old is going to give. Probably when I was 10 years old. Because that's the guys that hooked me. That's the guys I remember to this day.
Dewey Robertson, I worked with Dewey some in Japan. Dewey was a really good looking guy when he was younger. And I say that because when he got older, he wasn't good looking. He was, he had all scar. He looked that way on purpose, to be the missing.
The link gimmick, yeah.
When he was younger, great body, good looking guy. It kind of shocks you when you see him because so many people just remember him as the missing link.
Yes. Yeah. So that hooked me, and I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah. Well, Ron, when you told how long were you going and finally told your parents, oh, you're 10 years old, so you had their entire life in front of you. During that course of getting up into your teenage years, was this in the back of your mind? I want to do this. But did you notice, Ron, that you weren't the biggest guy in the arena there? And how are you going to do this?
Still not the biggest guy in the arena, Jerry. I started. It consumed me since I seen it. This is the only thing I've ever wanted to do. I said, I got to do this. But you're right, Jerry. I was small. how am I going to do this? Well, you know what? Let's try amateur wrestling, because amateur wrestling is your way to get into the pros back then, right? If you can stick with the amateurs, you can make your way to the pros. That was the common thought process. So I started a little amateur wrestling at the YMCA. I did some boxing, I did some judo, I did some karate. And the one thought always in my head was, I'm doing this for one reason only. Is that somehow, some way, I'm going to get into the ring. So when I was 17 going on 18 years of age, I seen an ad in one of the Toronto newspapers. And the ad said, train under two of the world's finest professionals, Sweet Daddy Siki and Johnny Powers.
Wow.
And it was at Sully's gym in Toronto here, which is Canada's oldest boxing and wrestling club.
That's sort of like the one in New York City, right? John, what's the name of that gym there that everybody used to go to in New York? Where?
Oh, you're thinking about Johnny Rod's gym, the
Bronx gym?
Yeah.
The gym. That's where Tyson, punched Mitch Green.
Yeah.
What was the name of that place? Yeah.
Well, Sully's was the exact same type of gym, right out of the Rocky movies. We even had a homeless guy who was living there. 24/7. True story. True story. Homeless guy that was living there named Mike. He's still there today. His urn is in the office, and it was right out.
Wait a minute, you got a homeless guy's urn in the office?
Not only the homeless guy's urn in the office, but also the owner of the gym, Sully himself. Yes, sir.
Wow.
How'd you get the homeless guy's urn? Did y'all?
Oh, okay, that's a great story. Mikey, when Sully got the gym, I think he inherited the gym from a guy called Deacon Allen, who used to work, boxing and wrestling around here with Frank Tunney. He owned the Toronto Athletic Club. In 1964, I believe it was, he passed away and passed on the gym to Sully. Mikey, the homeless guy, lived at the gym. Deacon took him in, found him one day, apparently, in the entranceway to the gym, took him in, looked after him. So before passing the gym to Sully, he told him, look, I'm going to pass the gym on to you, but you got to look after Mikey. So Mikey come along with the real estate.
Well, did Mikey live there? Where did Mikey live?
He lived at the gym.
He had a bed there or what?
Yeah, he had a bed. He washed the boxers' towels. Sully put a TV for him, and we had the original wooden bleachers from the Maple Leaf Garden. So Mikey would sit there, and really nice guy, like a jovial guy. Maybe must have been a boxer in his day, because he was a little bit punchy at times. Like I remember they had the
well, he's living in the doorway. Of course he's punchy.
Well, he was, until we brought him into the gym and actually housed him. But he used to, wash the towels, and he used to like hockey. So I remember he would be to the gym every time I'd come and train. So he'd be watching the Toronto Maple Leafs game, and the score was 2-1. I don't know who they're playing, but the score was 2. I said, Mikey, good game, huh? Yeah, good game. I said, who's winning? 2. 2-1. That was the score, but he couldn't tell you, who exactly was winning, but whoever had 2 was winning.
So when he died, did y'all just like have a bonfire and keep the ashes, or what happened?
No, Sully looked after him and cremated him, and put him in an urn, and he had no family. Right? He had no family that anybody knew of. Not really sure where he come from, other than could have been a lifelong Toronto resident. I do not know, but his name was Mike Levinsky. Yeah.
Jerry Gleason's gym. I just looked it up.
Gleason's gym. That was
That's
it.
Johnny Rod's gym. It's driving me crazy too.
Yeah. So Sully's gym and Gleason's gym are one and the same, just about, aren't they?
Yeah. When Muhammad Ali come here to fight George Savallo at the Gardens, he trained at Sully's, and it's a well-known gym up here.
As a kid, were you seeing any of these superstar boxers come in?
No, the wrestling was always separated from the boxing. The wrestling was top secret, so we never let the boxers see what we were doing, and vice versa.
Yeah. Now the amateur side of it, how far along did you go with that, and who was your coaches at doing that?
I had a guy I went to high school and Northern Secondary School in Toronto here, and wrestling wasn't big, so there were no wrestling teams. But I thought, I want to wrestle. This is the only way I'm going to be able to try pro wrestling is if I get at least half decent amateur. So I bugged them, and there turned out being another kid who was interested. So Bottom line is, two of us ended up being on the wrestling team, but we didn't have one at school. They sent us to other schools in Toronto. One was Danforth Tech. His name was Coach Robinson. His first name escapes me at the moment. And they also sent us to Central Tech, which was a powerhouse in amateur wrestling in Toronto. So I did that for a year or two until I dabbled a little bit in boxing, not at Sully's, because I did go to Sully's for boxing, but it scared the hell out of me. So I ended up going, yeah, no, it was like I say, right out of the Rocky movies, complete with a homeless guy. And so I ended up going to a place called the Cabbagetown Boxing Club, which Sean O'Sullivan ended up boxing out of, and it was closer to my home anyway. So I ended up doing that, but I really didn't like get punched in the face. Wrestling was more my forte, and a little bit of judo, but I just did it, like I say, to get into the pros, because unlike today, that was the mindset that you had to go through to get into business.
And when did you first make contact with Sweet Daddy or with the wrestling gym to end up starting getting trained?
I would say 17 going on to 18. So 1981 going on to 82. I seen this ad in the newspaper and I bugged my parents. And I remember my mother and I went up there. We talked to Johnny Powers. I think Sweet Daddy was there as well, but we talked to Johnny Powers. And they said, you know what? You're only 17. We don't start training people 18, and you're small. I thought, yeah, but I'm doing the amateur wrestling and stuff. And so finally, I guess I bugged them enough that they let me in. My mother said, you sure you really want to do this? I said, yeah, absolutely. She said, as long as you continue to do well in school and you go through school, you'll have the blessings of your father and me. So I did it, and I never looked back. Loved it.
Wow.
Loved it. I used to leave high school and go to the Y and work out on their mats and lift weights. And I was, like I said, when I first started training, John, I was 153 pounds. Powers ended up having me take 100 desiccated liver pills a day to try and bulk up and gain weight. Yeah, it's lucky I'm still here. I see your eyes.
Liver pills a day?
100 desiccated liver pills.
Where in the world did he come up with something so preposterous?
Don't know, but
that's the craziest thing I've heard.
I was taking them during in between periods at high school. Wow. It's a wonder I didn't kill myself, but here I am.
How long did you take the liver pills?
You know what? It took me. I went in there about 153 pounds. They finally let me out after I'd seen Jay Youngblood one day at the Gardens, and I passed him, and I went back and I told I think it was Siki. I said, you know what? I went by Jay Youngblood Reg, and I'm the same size as him. You know, he's no bigger than me. So they finally let me start to work then. June the 5th, 1983. So somewhere between 81 and 83, I was taking those pills. I don't think it was for the full 2 or 3 years, but it was.
So you owe everything to Jay Youngblood and our Jay Romero.
Well, he's. I don't think I've other than walking by him in the Maple Leaf Gardens, I don't think I ever met him. But I looked at him and I thought, okay, he's no bigger than me. And I was about, like I say, 175 at the time, which I figured he was too.
So when you're taking 100 pills a day, were you like taking 100 at a time, or were you taking 10 at a time?
10 at a time. And I remember them taking them in between periods, my high school course. They said, what are you doing? I said, my trainer says this, I need these to bulk up. But I was taking, the protein powders and stuff as well. And I was working hard for them to let me work.
Well, were you gaining weight? Were you gaining weight? Could you see the increase?
Yeah. But I've never, ever been a body guy. Never will. But, I said, I got to do it. And of course, when I was training, I was the youngest guy there and the smallest guy there. But I could work with anybody. I had that passion. I could bump with anybody. And the ring, it wasn't a wrestling ring. It was a boxing ring. So it was hard as hell. But I wouldn't trade that experience for the world.
How many pills are you supposed to take a day of liver pills?
That's a good question. I'd have to grab a bottle and take a
Not
look.
100, that's for
But
sure.
no,
Certainly not 100. Maybe
is it like 2 a day they recommend or something? I mean, you're taking like 25 times or 50 times what you're supposed to.
Well, Johnny Powers was kind of like the John Layfield of the day. You know, he was a Adonis-like body, and he was a wrestling god at that
I
time.
would put Layfield in Johnny Powers' body, I'll tell you that.
So I'm not going to
Hey,
question
let me
him.
tell you
I'm a
something.
17, 18-year-old kid.
I got my iPad. I'm about to Amazon desiccated liver pills, and you will see in about 3 weeks.
I don't even know if they still make them today. I guess they do.
And do you still have a liver? Do you still have a liver after that?
If I don't, it's because of the beer.
Because of the alcohol, that Canadian alcohol, not the liver pills, right?
Exactly.
So when they're training you and you're coming along, Rob, how were they smartening you up? I mean, you're obviously a bright guy. I mean, the work, were they stiff with you? How did they smarten you up?
They really didn't. I'll tell you the truth. And I never really smartened anybody up when I was training them either. I'll get to a story later. Remind me, Mad Dog Rex. They really did. What they did is the same thing that I did. I remember the first time I got in the ring with Siki, he said, okay, show me what you can do. And I went for a double A, quickly dropped down, went for a double A. Whoa. And he backed up and he said, whoa. And he started to chuckle. He said, I forgot you were an amateur. So how we learned is the same way I taught everybody is I would show them something. Let's say a lockup. I'll show you how to lock up. Don't kill me. You'll notice that, I'm locking up with you. It's solid, it's snug, but I'm not trying to kill you. I'd show them, then I'd want them to do the same thing to me. All the holds the same thing. I'm going to show you this hold. This is the way you do it. Now do it to me. Then we put the holds together, into spots and stuff. But I remember teaching clotheslines one time, and it was off the rope, coming off the rope, nailing the guy with the clothesline coming off the rope. And I remember I had a guy there who looked like Charles Bronson, right? His name was Leroy.
I love that, Charles Bronson.
Oh, this guy looked exactly like him. And, he come in and we're teaching clotheslines this one particular day. And I said, okay, guys, that's what we're going to do. Oh, Leroy, I'm going to show you, then you show me. So I said, stand in the center. So I come off, I hit him with a clothesline. I said, not in the throat, just down here, just down below the throat. Don't slide up when you put it was like the Masked Superstar style, right? Off the rope, up in the air, boom. Don't hit me in the throat. I did it to him, no problem. He did it to me, boom, caught me in the throat. 3 times he did that. And I told Leroy, now it's my turn. And I hit those ropes again. I come off full force and nailed him. He did a complete 360, banged his head on that boxing ring, and don't think I ever seen Leroy again after that. But not only had you had to be physically tough to graduate out of Sully's wrestling training, you had to be mentally tough. You had to figure it out. My parents, for instance, they went to the grave without me telling them that this was a work. Now, they weren't stupid because Mad Dog Rex, and I guess this is going to lead to the story that I was telling you, was a guy that Siki and I trained. His name was Neil Carr. And when he first started working, it was for a WWE television taping in about 1984 or so. And he was ready to work, and I phoned Jack. I said, Jack, I think we got somebody ready. He can come in and work TV. And no problem, Ron, bring him along. So we went to the Brantford Civic Center, and they put him in a match with, I don't know if it was a tag match or a singles match, but it was a match against Ted Arcidi on the other side of the ring. The world's toughest, strongest man and stiffest. So Neil, he's starting to get a little nervous as we get closer to bell time. And he comes to me and he said, Ron, what do I do? What do I do? I looked at him and I said, Neil, you do exactly the same thing as we do in the gym. Nothing more, nothing less, the exact same thing. And he looked at me and went, oh. And at that moment, he kind of got smartened up. And then, getting this back to the story about Neil.
Wait a minute. Did anybody ever smarten up our city?
Yeah, not to this day, John.
Our city was down in Texas, and you know the Simpson brothers, right? Jerry, Steve, and Sean
Yeah.
Simpson from Africa. You know, their dad
Yes,
was
yes.
down there. Good,
Yeah.
good guys. In fact, his Steve just lives down in Frankston, Texas now. Wonderful guy. I love Steve. But Steve was working with our city. Steve is a really, really good worker. He locks up with our city, and there's that 727 bench press from our city. Just drives him, and our city goes, "Just relax, kid." I'm just like, who the hell are you talking to?
It was my mother, like I said, they went to both of them. Now they weren't stupid because Neil was here one time while he was training, come to my place, and we would joke around and he'd eat and stuff. And then he went out to Al Tomko's wrestling in Vancouver, and he become a Mad Dog Rex. Well, as Mad Dog Rex, he was grunting and drooling, and my mom happened to walk by the TV one day when Neil was on, and she stopped for a minute and she looked, and then she looked at me, and all she said was, "He wasn't like that when he was here." And so it's just an understood
Right.
understanding. You don't have to beat somebody over the head with it. That doesn't feel good.
Hey, Ron,
Yeah,
let me ask you a quick question that's complete non sequitur from anything we're discussing about our city. I worked out at a gym in Texas with Ken Lane, who one time broke our city's record. Then our city ended up doing the 727. Raw, no, phenomenal bencher, one of strongest men of all time. Whatever happened to our city?
No idea, Jerry.
I mean, he legitimately was the best bencher in the world, first 700 bencher, and was just god awful strong.
Maybe they got rid of him because he didn't really learn how to work.
I didn't know. Went to WWE, came to Texas. Never really. I don't know. Just you had some guys like Jeep Swenson around the same time. Was also
Jeep Swenson. Wow, yeah,
huge guy, not nice guy. Thank goodness. Not a great worker.
Yeah. Yeah, no, a lot of the muscle heads, they didn't last.
So as you're coming along, Ron, you got Johnny Powers, who's a legend, who's one of the greatest of all times. You could put him up there with anybody, I think. And you got Sweet Daddy Siki. Were you aware of the knowledge that you were training under, and what was your thoughts at that?
Absolutely. Because unlike today, it was hard to find a place to train for professional wrestling. They just didn't exist.
Yeah, right.
The business was very secretive, even at that time. And it was so when I seen this ad, it was definitely a novel.
Yeah.
Like I had never seen that before. I thought, and it's Sully's gym. And like I said, everybody had heard of Sully's gym. So I went there, and I definitely knew of Siki's and Powers. They were top-notch wrestlers here.
At what stage of Siki's career was he at that time?
He would have been, let's see, it was in 81 going into 82. So he was starting to approach, he wasn't quite 60 yet, but making his way there.
Getting there, yeah. He's such a fascinating
guy.
Sorry.
That was when Adam come in. He was around. So I'm going to say he was about 48, 49 when 44. I started to train in 81. Yeah.
Yeah, he was set to start. Were you aware of all the things that he had done? I mean, his background. We'll give John credit. He was born outside of Houston, Texas, the great state of Texas, as John would say, and then his family migrated like a lot of Midwesterners out to California. Got his schooling out there, joined the military, went in the military. But I think right before he went in the military, he got the wrestling bug and was kind of wanting to. Okay, yeah, would you kind of take the story from there, kind of fill us in?
From what I understand, Jerry, like you say, born in Texas, ended up going to California at the age of 15. Started a little bit of training with Sandor Szabo and Ray Ortega in California.
But he was never, the way I understand, he was never in the ring with Szabo for some reason.
No, I think it was more Ray Ortega, but it might have been Szabo's name on the school.
Right.
Right. So I think the trainer was more Ray Ortega, but it was the Szabo's school.
Szabo's school, yeah.
Started training there, and then the Korean War broke out. So he spent a few years in the army, come back to California, ended up training again. He was about 185 pounds at that
Yeah,
time.
Siki, I was going to say Siki's a lot like you and me, vertically challenged. I mean, and not like John, where he's 7 foot tall almost.
Yeah. I
So,
was looking
yeah,
at a
so-
picture of John and
so-
I from the CAC too when you did the seminar, John, and I thought, oh my God, yeah. I'm glad I didn't have to train guys like
Yeah,
that.
but he did like you did. I don't think he took 100 liver pills a day, but he was
Maybe I
stuffing
haven't
himself.
done it then, Jerry.
He could have though. He could have. Let's say he did.
Yeah.
Have you had your liver tested?
Oh, not that I know of, but I probably have. Like I've got
Well,
no
you'd
health
probably be dead by now if something's wrong with it. So,
Yeah.
So he went.
did you ever ask Johnny Powers like Johnny, was that a rib? I mean, would you ever talk to Johnny later
Never
about the
did.
100 pills?
Never did, because Johnny Powers ended up leaving the gym in '83, and I fell out of contact with him for several years. But then eventually, probably the last 7, 8 years, before he passed, we did come into contact again. And but getting back to Siki, after he had finished his stint in the Army, he come back to California. He was 185 pounds, like I say. Apparently too light to get a wrestling license in California, or could have got it, but with a little difficulty. So he run into a guy called, I want to say Ray, no, not Ray Ortega. Could have been, yeah, Ray Ortega, who sent him to New Mexico. Sent him to New Mexico, where he ended up starting to work. Of course, he worked all throughout the U.S. Somewhere in there, he hooked up with Buddy Rogers. And ended up, Buddy Rogers apparently had a clique of wrestlers that would travel with him around the eastern United States.
You're right on that. All those old time champions had that group of guys they could trust, and they went to each territory and they brought their entourage along with them and got them bookings. But it's really strange how this guy, Buddy Rogers, a white guy, who's the world champion, has all the potential in the world, sees this young man in Sweet Daddy Siki, Reggie Siki, as he was at that time, and said, "This kid, I'm going to take him and I'm going to help him." I think that's an amazing story about Buddy Rogers.
Oh, absolutely. And one that he never told that often, but he did tell me that. Certainly doesn't get told often enough. And I think, when I think back at it, I know he's got or he had one of Buddy Rogers' sequin jackets. I think a red, white, blue jacket that he took a fancy to, and apparently Buddy Rogers sold it to him for $100, which would have been big money at the time.
Yeah.
So he ended up traveling with Buddy Rogers. Now, I would think, I don't know for sure, but I would think sort of patterned his style off of Buddy. That was probably during that era where he transitioned into Sweet Daddy. You certainly see the Buddy Rogers influence.
Now here's the part of Siki's career that I'm a little confused about. He went to New York. He didn't have the bleached blonde hair. He wasn't Sweet Daddy the first time he went in there, was he?
No.
Okay.
He went into New York just prior to New York switching from the NWA to WWF. So he was working for Vince McMahon Sr. then. No, he did not have the bleached blonde hair.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if he started that in Toronto. It's possible. I don't know for sure.
From all the research I could find, that's when he started.
I watched this documentary last night, which is an incredible documentary. And, it was from a woman in the crowd that said it's called him Sweet Daddy.
Yeah.
And called that again. That's how he got the name. But shortly after that, I think that was Toronto. Shortly after that, he had seen a Hollywood star. He did it in New York, Jerry. I believe he did it in New York. He went up to Harlem or something, got his
hair. It was New York. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he went up. I think he went up to Harlem and got his hair dyed blonde.
You know what?
Movie actress.
Rings a bell now.
That's right. And he walked out, and he said when he walked out, it basically stopped traffic. This huge guy with blonde hair, and he goes,
"Now you put yourself. This is back in the 50s, and I'm seeing black man with that bleached blonde hair. I mean, you would stop traffic. I mean, can you imagine in Sweetwater, Texas, seeing that? I mean, if we're running into each other.
Even today in 2025, huh, John?
That's right. You'd have two tractors hitting each other.
Yeah, two cars there. Layfield's on them both, man.
That's right. That's right. One thing amazing that I saw in that documentary was what his home life was, there outside of Houston. I mean, he was part of a sharecropper family, which for those that don't know, that is basically indentured servants. That's barely a step away from slavery. I mean, it's something that should be illegal, and I'm sure it is now. But they would, have families that would live on, pick cotton, and they get a little bit of cotton for their pay. They didn't get paid. They never got out of debt. But it was basically slavery. It was horrible. His home life growing up was incredibly hard. Then when his mother passed away, that's how he ended up with the family going out to California. But what's amazing about this, and you would know this better than anybody, Ron, because you knew him, and me and Jerry didn't. He never seemed bitter. He seemed like a very good statesman. He's an impressive guy.
He was a very, very quiet guy. He was always a gentleman, quiet. You would never know most of his background. Matter of fact, it wasn't through him that I found out his real name. I found out his real name by mistake. His real name is Elkin James. And I found out many years after I started to train with him, where I was talking to one of my buddies who owned a bar and said that he had him in there to, I think, sing, some of his country and Western music, and he had him sign a contract. So the contract was signed under Elkin James, not Reggie James. And he was also very, very secretive about his age. And I knew his age, but again, it wasn't because any exchange of info we had at the gym or in our wrestling days together. It was at my mother's funeral where I found out his age, or actually at the visitation, because Siki and his wife Ann come to the visitation and the funeral when my mom passed away in '88. And I remember during the visitation, Siki saying to me, he said, "Ron," he said, "what year was your dad born?" I said, 1932, Reg. And he said, "Whoa, I was born the year after." That was the only time I've ever heard him mention anything about any clue as to his age. And I remember that to this day. He was, because I run into people, "Oh, Sweet Daddy, he's 83." Nah, he's a little bit older than that.
I read that one of the research papers I was doing that when he passed away, they was looking at his age. He was actually 3 or 4 years older than what he had written. Sort of like a Dusty Rhodes character in that there. Dusty was 11 months older, man. I used to give him hell. So he started lying about his age, and he literally had like 2 or 3 passports with different ages on there. And the funny story is, when he got to 65, he wanted to apply for Social Security. So Michelle fills out all the paperwork. He gives her the wrong date of birth, and so he didn't qualify. So she had to spend, and Dusty killed Dusty. He had to buy a ticket, fly Michelle out to Austin, Texas, where they don't keep written records of anything, and try to research and find a passport for Virgil Ronnie Reynolds, or find a birth certificate. And they finally found a birth certificate which verified his age. And I never let that. When Michelle told me that story, I wanted to give her $1,000. I said, "Thank you. This is my admonition for him forever, man."
Jerry, wait a minute. So Dusty lied about his age so much, when he was asked his age, he gave the wrong age.
He gave the wrong age on a government certificate where they checked and he didn't qualify for any help.
Well, you tell it so much, you eventually start to believe it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That is awesome. What a great story.
Yeah. So Reggie, Sweet Daddy was doing the same thing early. Maybe that's where Dusty got the blonde hair and the line about his age.
You never know.
Ron, one thing I was amazed at when I'm watching this documentary is I didn't realize how few blacks were in wrestling during that time. And not just that they weren't used, they're how few. I mean, they only mentioned that there were 3 basically at the time: Bobo Brazil, Brickhouse Brown, and Sweet Daddy. I didn't realize that. I mean,
there was a few. There was like Siki,
one Brickhouse.
Was a partner of Siki's. They were big.
Not Brickhouse. Who was it, Jerry? The big guy.
We talked about him earlier. Now I'm up there. The big basketball player.
Ernie Ladd?
Bearcat Brown.
Bearcat, right? Yeah.
Bearcat right.
Bearcat right.
It was pre-Ernie. It was way pre-Ernie.
Yeah. But even up till 1983, and I know this because I got a poster of my first match was for the Canadian Wildman, Dave McKegney, the Bear Man. And on that show was Bobo Brazil. And above his picture, it's a huge Negro superstar. Bobo Brazil, which, and people look with their eyebrows raised. But in 1983, as late as then, they were advertising the black wrestlers as kind of like as special attractions.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to spend 10 months in Australia with Bobo. He was there for probably 3 or 4 of those 10, 11 months I spent there. And we used to talk about Siki. That's where I first started hearing about Siki. You can imagine, I'd never met the guy, and as I told you in our interview, he was just one of those names that you hear in the backseat of the car. Sweet Daddy, number one, that's going to get your attention when somebody brings it. Sweet Daddy.
Yeah,
And so I was always fascinated. The guys always talked so highly of this guy. So when I met Bobo, I had that Bobo. Do you know Sweet Dad? Oh yeah, I know. And he would tell me stories, share stories with me about Sweet Daddy. But what a fascinating guy, and to gain the respect of so many guys like he did. What a wonderful person. But as he's coming along. He meets he's up in New York and he's getting over. He's drawing big crowd for Vince Senior, and all of a sudden, he goes to Toronto. I think he meets his future wife there, marries her, and brings her back to New York. And she happens to be a white lady, a Caucasian lady, and he's invited to a party. I guess that's where Vince Jr. probably got the routine. After a big garden show, Vince Senior would take all the guys, the top guys, to a nice steakhouse, and he invited Twiki and his family. And all of a sudden, he shows up with a white lady, and then all of a sudden, his booking started. Is that story as much as you know? True?
That's about as much as I know. Like I say, very rarely talked about his personal life. And when he was up in Canada, he did go back to the States a few times, but not a lot. I know he went and worked for around 85 or so. He went to Puerto Rico. He won, I guess it was there, I want to say North American strap from Pedro Morales in Puerto Rico in around 85 or so. He went to Tennessee for a bit and worked for Jerry Lawler.
Yeah, let's get into that Tennessee because that's a fascinating story about his time in Tennessee.
Yeah, he wasn't there long, and I remember him coming back to the gym, and I guess he wasn't really satisfied with the payoffs from what I remember him telling me. But he was there long enough that I see it's on YouTube. He's got a great interview on YouTube, and he turns babyface on an interview with Tux Newman, I think it was, the manager, Scott Walton. Yeah, and a great interview.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a racial driven type interview, right?
Yes. I think
I'm not your boy. I'm not your boy.
Exactly. That's what it was. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm nobody's boy.
Yeah.
And he ended up turning face.
And he had, according to the documentary that I saw, was the first integrated championship match against Buddy Rogers in Greensboro, is what they said, where the Klan literally comes down to stop the match during the match.
Yeah, I've heard that several times. I've also heard some wrestling historians try and look that up, and can't find any evidence of it, but I have heard that. He himself has told me that. So who knows? It seems definitely plausible.
It's a great story, and John, that's sort of like the story that Thunderbolt told us too. When I was tag teaming with Thunderbolt, we were the first interracial tag team there in North Carolina that had the championship. We go in a little town like North Wilkesboro. There'd be big signs up there. Welcome to KKK country. Thunderbolt, I guess you're going in and buying the beer tonight. So, but the remarks and all that stuff, and this is 30 years before Thunderbolt. So I been with Thunderbolt, traveling around with him. And then, put yourself back when that interracial stuff was just not even, that was taboo. It was a bad business for the people back then.
And I guess he stayed here because he found Canada a more accepting society, and thank God he did, because he trained me and influenced so many others.
But Toronto was always kind of known for that, right? I mean, you always had all kinds of different ethnicities, all different cultures, and
yes,
it was kind of a melting pot, right?
Yeah, still is now. So
compared to a lot of other places, we're down in the South, you had all these, in a lot of places in the States, racial problems and tensions and things. And it didn't seem like you had as much in Toronto because of the openness and diversity of the population.
Right. You're correct.
What is it?
So he's in New York and he's getting that push, and all of a sudden the bookings start to die down. and he said, "I'm moving up north," and that's where his wife was from, right?
Yes.
Was from Toronto.
Yeah,
Is she
she
is she
lived here.
still
I think
is?
she was Estonian, but whether she was born there or not, I don't know. Um, but she's definitely lived here, and this is where he met her. Yes.
It doesn't really go into into detail about the abuse that she took. You know, when she was on the road with her, she had to take a lot of abuse too. I mean,
Had
it
to.
had
Again,
had
she
to,
was Anne was very quiet as well. Very unassuming, and they had two beautiful boys. One, actually, both of them used to play in Sweet Daddy's bands around town, and the oldest one, Reggie, I'd met him a couple of times when I think he was playing drums in the band, and Justin, who was the younger son, actually ended up coming and training with us for a while. And him, like me myself, he was doing the amateur wrestling at Central Tech and stuff. And I think it was Sweet Daddy convinced him to come in and try the pro training at the gym, and he did. And we got along well. And he was, you know what? I look back today and I think if he had wanted to, he ended up drifting away from the gym and stopping his training. But if he wanted to, he could have carried on that Sweet Daddy Siki name today. He was that good.
a shame it is. How had I guess Tony really took a liking to him because he used him real well up there for many years. Tell us a little bit about his Toronto days, his Toronto part of his career.
Well, I would. When I started follow the sport, I was not at his prime. He was just a little bit before me here, 60s. I started early 70s, so he wasn't. He was still working at the Gardens, but mid card, second match, somewhere in there. So they weren't really pushing him at the Gardens when I was a fan. But however, he was getting steady work every 2 weeks. It would travel the loop, and he ended up, I think, probably around 1980, 81, somewhere in there. That was probably his last Gardens match. And he ended up working the loop for the Canadian Wildman, the Bear Man, Dave McKegney. And Dave would put him on top and stuff. And he's just a phenomenal worker. I remember he ended up tagging with Bobo Brazil there toward the end when both of them were at the tail end of their careers here at the Scarborough Arena. Just that he was a definite, I want to say, icon here wouldn't be out of order. He was definitely an iconic figure here in Toronto. Well known, well loved, not only for his wrestling. He did the singing, like I've alluded to. Then he got, I guess there's too much hassles with the country and western bands, so he then got into karaoke and did that. Less hassles when you only got to look after yourself. And there's not too many that I could say anything bad about him.
Yeah, right. When you first started going at an early age, around 10 years old, the crowd, I'm sure you really didn't take notice, but there probably wasn't a lot of black people in attendance here because everything was so segregated. I don't know about Canada, but down here. But as he getting up there and as you're seeing towards the end, where was he drawing a population of black people to the arenas?
You know what? You're right, Jerry. I didn't take note of the crowds, but I think you're right. There wasn't that many black people. A few, but I didn't really pay any attention to. They weren't really pushing him on top. We had guys like Abdullah the Butcher and stuff, and I don't think that Ernie Ladd, and I don't think that when any of them come in, that the black population at the Gardens went up. I could be wrong.
What
What did go up?
you mentioned two iconic names there, and earlier and Abdullah, and then the one that's most iconic is one is Sweet Daddy. So he must have just had that connection with the fans that these other great stars did not have there. What
Oh,
was that connection? Just his personality and his smile or his demeanor
I
or
think
what?
I think just his personality in that he was colorful, especially for that time. You don't see, even to this day anywhere, you don't see black men with bleached blonde hair. And he used to drive around town. He had at one time
A
he had a
hearse. Tell us about that purple hearse.
purple horse, right? He used to drive around. That was I want to say early 80s, mid 80s. He had that purple hearse. well.
He drove around in a purple hearse.
Purple hearse, yeah.
Before that, he had a Rolls Royce he used to tour the city with. I remember him most. He had just a plain old boring Ford Econoline van that we used to
I
make.
I get the Rolls Royce, the hearse.
The hearse, yeah, he found it cheap on sale, through a buy and sell or something. I don't think it was purple when he got it. It could have been. It'll get him attention.
Here's what I read. It was a black hearse. He had marred Gorgeous George Sr., Gorgeous George, the iconic Gorgeous George.
Yes, right.
George had that purple Cadillac, which, by the way, we painted Gorgeous George Jr. Cadillac purple, a lavender, he called it.
Okay.
And so and from what I read and everything, all the different research that I was doing, he kind of fashioned himself to be a black Gorgeous George. And do you kind of go along with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. He had the like the fancy robes, and he had
the mirrors and
two mirrors and the white gloves. He used to pull them out from underneath his
and a valet too, like
himself.
George, right? And a valet. He used a valet a lot of times too.
And then he'd give the mirrors to the ring announcer or the referee, however, and then one by one he'd take his white gloves off, finger by finger, of course, irritating that crowd.
Yeah, heat.
And he had glasses, like fancy Edge and Christian, like fancy glasses. And sometimes his opponent would slap him in the head and knock them off. And of course, he'd play the whole stick. And for a lot of my time with him up here, he was always a baby face, though. So he's been here so long that people end up loving him.
Did he get that in California? Is that where he got the Gorgeous George influence?
Well, he was at the time. I know he had guys like Gene Stanley. He had watched on TV just before he started his training, and Antonio Rocca. I'm sure Gorgeous George was probably in there at that time.
Well, he was around during those early days at Demont TV. I think he was one of the first black stars ever to be on national TV on a wrestling show, John, too. On that
DeMont Chicago, I believe he was. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Jack Johnson, the first, black heavyweight champion. And me and Ron Simmons always joke about the balls of Jack Johnson. He was the first black heavyweight champion in the era of the Klan. He was married to a white woman, and he had a liquor store during Prohibition. I mean, Jack Johnson was the man. I love that guy. I'd love to meet Jack Johnson. But Siki was very much the same. I mean, here's a guy still during segregation. You talk about the Klan wanted to break up his match with Buddy Rogers because he didn't want a black guy wrestling for the title, married to a white woman. I mean, Siki he didn't try to hide. I mean,
he didn't care. No, he
an incredible person. I love that. I think it's great.
He did his own thing, and if you didn't like it, well, then you can be damned.
Right, and
that's a good way
to walk around with that blonde hair and the sunglasses, which I don't know where you'd find those sunglasses back then. I don't know where you'd find them now. The whole character to me, just watching the
well before his time. I think he was well before his time. He could have made
decades ahead of his time.
Decades. He could have made a ton of money had he come up in a different era with that gimmick.
Right. You look now, you see the Coco Beware. I mean, Coco, you look at Coco, he bleaches there. I mean, he has a lot of the traits that a Sweet Daddy Siki would have, and a funny story. I'm jumping all over the place.
Go ahead.
Buddy Rogers, he was Booker here in Florida for a while, and then I saw a clip on one of those social deals last night where Jack and I was in a 6-man tag with him. By the way, being in the ring with Buddy Rogers was like being in the ring with the Almighty, back in my mind.
Oh, for sure, yeah. To Siki too.
But we had sweet brown sugar, and when Buddy got here, the first thing he had Sweet Brown Sugar do was bleach his hair blonde, and that was Buddy Rogers. Yeah. So that's how
Buddy
Sweet Brown
found something that worked.
Yeah, exactly. And he had him working like he would sit down and talk to Skip about, this is how Buddy would do it there. You need to adopt all those. And to Sugar's credit, he did,
And Siki had seen that. Siki had seen the other guys come around, Butch Reed for
Butch Reed, yeah, another one,
blonde and stuff. But Siki would always say, you know what? He said, there's only one Mona Lisa, there's only one Niagara Falls, and there's only one Mr. Irresistible, Sweet Daddy Siki.
That's me.
And so it didn't bother him. He
Yeah.
just, what might have bothered him is they didn't do it as well.
But he portrayed he was proud of it, and he should have been proud of it.
For
I mean,
sure.
there's a
Absolutely.
guy past his prime, and these young guys are mimicking him.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
Still,
Yeah, there could be no.
still to this day, there are a lot of his attributes that could be copied by these younger guys.
For sure.
Black or white.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there could be no bigger honor than to have somebody pattern themselves off you.
Often imitated, never duplicated.
Absolutely.
Was Siki, when you knew him very well, was he happy with his career? I mean, here's a guy who was decades ahead of his time, who should have been even a bigger star, should have been world champion. But
I think that he always thought that, again, he'd come up in the wrong era. I think he thought he could have made a lot more money, boatload full of money if he'd come up in a later era. But yeah, I would say he
wasn't a bitter guy about it, though, was he?
No, not at all. Not at all. He just, by that time, by the mid 80s, he was getting up in age, and he could still, do it for the most part. But I remember here in Norm Kimber, I remember talking to Norm said to me one time, you know what, he's getting a little old for this business. And we ended up going to Montreal, working for international wrestling, Siki and me at that time. And that's when I would make the road trips with him in his Ford Econoline van. And he was the slowest driver. He would no. This was pre-Hearst. So this was when he had the van, the boring Econoline red van. But he was the slowest driver he ever wanted to drive.
Really?
Oh my God. Not 1 mile over the speed limit. Not one, I remember. And it took us forever to get where we were going and back. And I was still going to school at the time. So I got school in the morning, Reg. I missed that a couple of times.
So when he had to go to the grocery store, he would drive his hearse to the grocery store.
At the time, I believe that was the only vehicle he had. Yeah.
Would he put the groceries in the back where the bodies would go, or?
Absolutely. You didn't think
nothing wrong with that.
I didn't say there was. Did you ever ask him why did?
Unless there's a customer in there,
Ron,
at Brisco Brothers Body Shop, we had the largest funeral home was one of our clients. We had to redo their hearse when they would get scratched or dinged up or something like that. We had a little cleanup guy that was scared to death to work on those hearse, man.
A lot of people were scared to death to get in this hearse with.
Yeah. So you have to open that back door. Every once in a while, we'd put a body man back there, and then John would go to open the door. The body man would set up. Yeah. We could hear Johnny hollering down the road down there.
To him, John, it was just a big Cadillac.
Yeah.
It's just a big Cadillac. That's a purple one.
So let's start. He got it cheap
as a secondhand user.
How does the hearse get dinged? What do you hit a tombstone?
Well, yeah, I guess you hit a casket, John. I don't know. Maybe it's a big boss man's hearse, that big boss man sold Big Show Dan's hearse out of. Who knows? The things happen to those hearses, man.
I don't know. I don't know anything about hearses.
Well, I do. We had them, man. I'm hot, man. Don't get me hot. So anyway, as he's going along, and start. How did you get into training school with? How did this all part of it?
Same year, I had my very first match, which was June the 5th, '83. Johnny Powers had ended up leaving the gym. By that time, Siki come to me one day and said, "Ron, Johnny's not coming back. Would you mind helping me with the training?" And I was elated to do it because, again, I thought, here I am working alongside one of my childhood idols, and he had enough faith in me, I guess, with the amateur background and by that time a little bit of the pro background, that I knew what I was doing and I could train these guys with him. And so from 1983 to 1994, we ended up partnering on a school at Sully's gym in Toronto.
And were you still working at that time, or did you pretty much give up the working to concentrate
on? What had happened, John, is I was working every summer. I went to the Maritimes in Atlantic Canada usually and did the 7 day a week, about 4 month tours down there. And I would do that in between every school years. So in 1988, I was down there working for Emile Dupre. and I got a call to come home because my mother was sick. So I said, Emil, I got to go. And I ended up coming home, and my mother ended up passing away. So my dad, by that time, had 3 heart attacks. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to be traveling anywhere and get this type of call again. I'm going to have to stay close to home. I still got the wrestling. I could do local spots around. I still had the school, and I enjoyed training. I enjoyed, every minute I spent training people. I thought I didn't have to get, bumped around all the time. I could do what I want. It was time for me to settle down, not stray too far from my dad, so this doesn't happen again. So in between that, I decided, you know what, I'll just do the local spots. I won't go in. So in between that, I did the school. I ended up getting married. I ended up having a kid. And by that time, the school was good enough for me.
And have you patterned yourself after any specific trainers? There are so many great trainers in the history of our business, from Farmer Burns on to Gotch to so many different trainers.
I don't know about patterning myself off of any specific trainer, other than the fact, I got to give credit to Sweet Daddy and Johnny Powers, who trained me. But certain exercises that I used during the training, I would give credit to Bob Backlund. I would give credit to the Hungarian Wolfman, Willie Farkas, and I would give credit to Archie the Stomper Goldie, who, I traveled with a little bit in the Maritimes, and he'd show me things like the Hindu squats with the cards, using the deck of cards where we turn them over and do the Hindu squats. So that's
the worst thing, and that's the worst invention ever.
The deck of cards, the Hindu squats. I used to have our guys go through that deck 2 or 3 times.
Now, where you're in the Maritimes, was Sweet Daddy up there working as a talent?
He was, but he was a heel.
Did he encourage you? I mean, was he one of those guys that would really help you out when you were in a territory with him?
I didn't see him that often because he was a heel and I was a baby face. And
kayfabe was ruled.
Exactly. Not only did we have separate dressing rooms, we had to stay in separate towns.
Yeah.
So if we're traveling the Trans-Canada Highway and there are not too many restaurants around, if we got hungry and went into a restaurant and see the heels were there, we'd either have to find another restaurant, or if it was that desperate, find a table the furthest away from them that we could. So I didn't really see him that much on the road. We worked, but didn't travel with him or anything, at least in the Maritimes.
Yeah. So you go back when your father. Go ahead, John.
What did the Hungarian give to you?
You know Willie Farkas?
No.
Jerry, you must. Oh, really?
I do not know Willie
for a little bit. He was managed by Freddie Blassie as the Hungarian Wolfman. Worked against San Martino, but
I knew who he was, but I don't.
He was always in friggin' great shape. Well, I mentioned earlier that I used to leave school and go to the Y and work out and stuff. Well, Willie was there, the Wolfman. And of course, I knew who he was. I was a big wrestling fan, and he was in great shape. And all I remember, he showed me an exercise. So Ronnie, he knew I was taking the wrestling and doing the amateur stuff, so he took a liking to me. And he said, "Hey, Ronnie, I'll show you this." And he grabbed a barbell with weights on it, and he placed them on a mat, and got a medicine ball. And he said, sit down with your feet under the bar." And I sat down on one side of that bar on a mat, a blue mat, and he sat down on the other with a medicine ball. And he picked the medicine ball up. He said, sit up. I sat up. He said, catch the ball. So as he was sitting up, he would throw that ball to me. I would catch it on my side, take it down below my head, sit up again, throw it to him. So he showed me that. He was in fantastic shape. All I remember him, he used to do that while he was playing. He would play handball, finish his game of handball, and come and work out with me. Ronnie, let's do this. And then he'd go back and play another game of handball. Phenomenal shape. He was always in tip-top shape, Willie.
Has anything changed dramatically over the decades of training for wrestling or for being in shape? Either one, besides maybe not taking 100 desiccated liver pills.
Well,
and not doing the squats with a card deck.
That's right.
Yeah, I did like a lot of old school training. I used to tell them, I would show you exercises that you can do on the road, like the towel pulls and stuff.
Yeah.
Not that you didn't need a gym to do most of the stuff that I would show people. As far as training, I know some of my guys have went out and either trained people or went to different schools doing seminars and guy who comes to mind just because you asked that question is a guy by the name of Johnny Swinger, who was where ECW and WCW and stuff. He said he goes to some of these schools and he says, Ron, he says, training, it's not like it used to be. It's nowhere near as tough. He said, I wouldn't trade what I did with you for anything in the world. And then I seen, I was watching a WWE, I guess it was Performance Center tape. This was several years ago. And I seen them doing simple back bumps. And I used to have them back bump, tuck the head and back bump in a boxing ring. But I seen at the Performance Center where they had to do it on a crash mat. And they had like a hockey
Gear
on.
Yeah, headgear on.
And so it's changing that way. That's probably for a good thing. I wouldn't like to train like that. I'd like to toughen them up and, beat the hell out of whoever I could and have the hell beaten out of me. I guess it's a different era. The whole world's gone bloody soft.
Yeah, it's like a fighter used to say, you have to harden the body. What
exactly.
fighters used to always say, I'm going to camp, first thing I'm gonna do is harden the body.
Exactly. And we did that by taking bumps on that ring. And not only that ring, sometimes the floor as well. The floor at the gym. I said, if you can bump here, you can bump on the floor. Right. No mats, the floor. I'm still walking now. I know a lot of guys that aren't because of that attitude, but I'm still doing okay, thank God.
And after 94, you mentioned 94. Did you continue training after that, or was that a break?
I did. Siki had come to me in 94 and he wanted to retire. He actually wanted me to retire. Now, I'm not sure something happened to piss him off. And to this day, as far as I know, he's never told anybody, including me, what. And I thought, really, come to me. I used to work with his wife, and he come to me at 4 a.m. one day. He said, Ron, I was talking to Sully, and I think, we agreed that you should give me the keys to the gym. And I thought, this come out of the blue. I'm not sure why. The only thing I think of a few things that might have upset him. And it's like he wanted to open up. We would close the gym down in the summer every year while either we would go and work or just close it down because we call it the Canadian National Exhibition, which is a huge fair we have, an exposition to you guys, I believe. But it was a huge fair. And the gym used to be right by that fair during the summer in August. And Siki lived right 2 blocks from the fair and on the other side, 2 blocks from the gym. So 94, he wanted to start a little early. And I thought, I'm not driving around the exhibition during 94. We'll open it. I said, I'll come back like we always do, Reg, after Labor Day in September. By that time, the fair is closed and I can easily drive there and park. But anyway, he opened it up. Now, whether that upset him that I didn't come back, I don't know. Nobody knows. But what had happened is somewhere around 94, the internet come into being. And of course, because we had been together from 1983, well, training since 81, but running the school together from 83 to 94, we did television shows, we did radio appearances, we had newspaper stories, we had, I think, a monthly ad in Wrestling's Main Event, the glossy wrestling magazine at the time. So people knew who we were. So when he separated, he no longer wanted to be advertised, as part of the school. He wasn't making any money off of it, then there's no use advertising. So he asked me to take it down. I said, Reg, all that stuff out there on those internet sites, that's got nothing to do with me. That's some site in Germany. That's some site, in Florida somewhere. It could be anywhere in the world. I don't control that. And I think over the past, until he passed, he got so, I guess, it bothered him so much that I do believe he ended up hating me for it. Hate may be too strong a word. I don't know. And I tried to talk to him several times about it, and he wouldn't talk to me about it. I asked friends, and acquaintances that we both had, and not one of them could tell me why he was so mad. The only thing they kept on saying, which was the same thing that I eventually realized, not the reason why he got mad in the first place, because I guess nobody will ever know now, but I know what continued that grudge on his part for 30 years was the fact that we're still advertised as the Sweet Daddy Siki Ron Hutchinson Wrestling School on the internet. Now, I did my best to change that in 94. We never mentioned his name, never had his picture, but Of course, if you Google that today, if you go ahead right now, John, and look it up, you will still find it. And that's
Wow.
the internet, and
Yeah.
things
Yeah,
don't disappear off the internet.
to your point, I was Googling some stuff this morning, just doing some research for this show, and
Hmm.
you're right. It all came up. Sweet Daddy
Well,
Ron Hutchinson.
Yeah.
That's what it came up.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. And he
Yeah.
tried for 30 years to get that down. It's not going away. And I
Yeah.
had told her at one point I got a lawyer's letter from. I've never gotten a lawyer's letter in my life.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
went to we had a PO box for the school. And I went there, and attention Ron Hutchinson, it was from some lawyer. And I opened it. And it was again about the internet. And I phoned this lawyer. And I told him exactly what I just told you two gentlemen. I said, I don't control it. It's not mine.
Yeah.
I don't have the time to do it. I've got no problem with it. And the lawyer, being the way lawyers are, he said, "You mean to tell me you don't have any problem somebody using your name without authorization?" I said, I have no problem with it, right? So anyway, that upset me because, like I said, I'd never gotten a lawyer's letter to this day. That's the only
Yeah.
one I've ever received.
Rod, you mentioned, Siki, was he okay financially? I mean, I'm not sure you don't know the answer through and through, but during his course of career, was he one of these guys that saved his money? Was he a pretty frugal
Oh
guy,
yeah.
or was he a
Oh,
spender?
absolutely. He wasn't known as a big spender. He definitely saved his money. He grew up in that era. My dad was the same. Um, Frugal, you could call it. Oh yeah. He didn't spend unwisely. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
So one of the most fascinating parts of this man's career, that man, there's so many of them, is the country music aspect of it. Once again, he's breaking racial barriers. I wonder if that was ever in his mind. And what I'm doing is to go down in history as breaking these barriers.
I don't think so. I think, to the best of my knowledge, I think he cut 3 albums up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3
I
albums.
actually have one somewhere that
I've
was
got one as well.
gifted
At
me
least
when
one.
I was in Mid Atlantic. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got 3 that I know of, and he wrote a few songs himself. But I don't
He
think
wrote he would, well, let's talk about the first time to everything. He wrote his own theme music to Come to the Ring. I
he
like what
did.
I see, or something like that, wasn't it?
It goes something like, "I told you once, and I told you twice. You people are ugly, and I'm so nice. Blow kisses at me and send me roses, 'cause you'll never be as pretty as me." And that's what I remember of it.
Hey, Ron, that's a good thing you were a great trainer, because as a singer, I think you'd be broke.
But that was, I think, the last song he wrote. His wife used to write songs for him too. She wrote
Yeah.
one I know called that was
And
on
one
one.
of his sons got into music with him too.
Absolutely, like I said, Justin and Reggie, they played in his band. Justin on
I
the.
mean, they weren't just a house band; they were a touring type band, right?
Oh
All
yeah,
over Canada.
yeah. Justin used to play the bass, I think, and Reggie on the drums, and yeah, they traveled all over. And he had
Yeah.
a lot of notable, country music musicians here that would play with him,
Yeah.
and all thought the world of him.
So
Now,
Ron,
he wouldn't just come out and sing. He would do the whole Sweet Daddy act. The band would play, maybe 3 songs. Then they'd introduce Sweet Daddy. And then as they're playing a
Strut
music, he
out.
would strut out, mirrors, cape, and
Wow.
looking at himself. And he would take the white gloves off. He would do the whole gig. Then he'd settle down into singing. Country and Western stuff. Charlie Pride, Hank Williams, stuff you'd like, Jerry. I loved it too. John too, I think, being from Texas.
Yeah.
A lot of the young guys don't like that now, but I loved it.
So Ron, were you guys estranged for like the most of the like since '94 on? Did you guys ever have any points where you were together, or
We did, but he did want to talk. I had seen him at Edge Appreciation Night in 2011 at the Air Canada Center. They did for Adam. I went to talk to him there. He had no interest.
Was Siki there that night?
He
too?
was there. He was there.
Wow.
They brought both of us into the ring and stuff, but he had no interest in talking. I tried. I thought, okay, well, so like I say, till this day, I guess I will never know now. I guess nobody will ever know exactly why he got mad to begin with. Most people who know me, and I think myself, I'm fairly easy to get along with, fairly reasonable. But there's something that pissed him off, and to this day, John, I have no idea what it
That's such a
Now
shame.
we mentioned Adam Copeland in this story there. When did Adam come in? Was Siki still a part of the
Yes, sir.
training? Adam came in, and what was their relationship?
Adam come in 92, so 2 years before Siki had left. At that time, the training was split, much like you would think somebody approaching their 60s and an assistant or partner half his age would do it. So, but he would come into the ring, on occasion. He used to like to, we had a bench press outside the ring. And he used to, right outside the ring, and he used to like to sit on that. And then, when the mood struck him, he would start benching. Then he'd look at what's going on in the ring again. If he's seen something, he'd come in. And I remember getting him one day because he was famous for his drop kicks. He told me, I don't know if it's true or not.
Sweet drop kick, baby. Yeah. Sweet drop kick.
He told me that he held the record in Maple Leaf Gardens for the most amount of drop kicks. And if memory serves me correctly, he told me he hit the Sheik with 17 drop kicks in a row at the Gardens. Now, I never seen the Sheik leave his feet after that. So whether he filled up his bump card or not in that one match, I don't know. But that's what Siki told me. And yes, you're right. He did have a sweet drop kick. I said, Reg, I'm gonna try teach drop kicks now. You want to come in?
Have you seen his drop kicks on the line?
Oh, absolutely. I got a picture.
He said it flat-footed. You're right in front of him. All of a sudden, he's up in your face, brother. And by the time you get up, he's nailing you with another one right in your face. I mean, no steps or like that. He just, boom, all of a sudden his feet are up over his head.
I've got a picture somewhere. It's on Facebook, actually. I put it. It's when I was training. And it's of somebody in gray sweatpants giving me a drop kick right in the throat. Boom, boom. 1 foot in the throat. You don't see who it is, but I can tell you now on a Brisco and Bradshaw exclusive. The legs attached to those feet had sneakers with Sweet Daddy Siki.
Sweet Daddy's, wow.
Yeah, right in the throat. And he had a sweet, he was a master of his craft, well liked, well respected. Thank God, I had managed to run into him when I started, him and Johnny, because, there are other, for lack of a better term, maybe shysters in our business that would have took advantage of a young kid coming up. He never did that. Powers never did that. I've never done that. So I was blessed.
So Adam Copeland got the full advantage of having Sweet Daddy around. Yeah. It was Christian a little bit after that, and Gail Kim and some of the other stars.
No, Gail Kim was and Trish and stuff were way after Sweet Daddy, but because like I say, he left in '94. Now I just come across a contract that Christian had signed. October the 1st is when he signed it. '94 is when he signed his contract to train, but. Like I said, '94, Sweet Daddy wanted to come in a bit earlier than that. And he did, and I didn't go in. I think Jay might have been there at that time. And then when Siki left, Sully come to me and said, Ron, he tried it alone for a couple of weeks by himself, but then he went to Sully, who owned the gym, and said, Sully, I don't want to do this. Here's the receipt book, which I have to this day. Here's the receipt book. Here's the keys. Give them back to Ron. So in September of that year, I did go back minus Siki, and I continued to training people to 2011. People like Trish Stratus come in around the end of '99 into 2000. Gail Kim after that. With Siki, we had Tiger Ali Singh. We had Adam. We had two gentlemen called the Canadian Kodiaks who ended up working for Bill Watts down when Crockett bought the Louisiana Tory there from Bill Watts. They were managed by Skandor Akbar at the time, I remember. Johnny Swinger, again, was another project of Siki and myself. So by 1994, as far as I know, he never trained anybody ever again.
When he walked away, he walked away.
As far as I know, I read online he was training, but I don't believe
never knew anybody that.
I don't believe that to be true for a minute. No.
Whatever happened to Tiger Ali Singh? He came in the WWE, and there was a lawsuit there. And I was with Jeet Singh, both and Ali Singh. I think he went by Jeet Singh Jr. Then I'm not sure.
Tiger Ali Singh
in
Jr.
Japan.
Oh, in Japan, FMW, wasn't it?
No, not FMW. Jeet
Or-
Singh was an FMW, but then Jeet Singh came to Kendo Nagasaki. It started up NOW, which was a split off with Genriki
Yes.
Kenru, who had split off from Inoki.
Right, right.
uh,
He now is running the Tiger Jeet Singh Foundation, and I know every Christmas they have a big. They close down the streets of Milton, and they have a big festival where they have free rides, and it's like a winter carnival, and they donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to underprivileged children around the Greater Toronto area, and that I know he's doing. I do hear from him every once in a while. It's been probably many years since I've actually heard from Senior, but I understand that everybody's doing well there, and I know Tiger Senior has got a school named after him here, and
oh, he
Junior,
does.
yeah, he does. He's got a public school named after Tiger Jeet
A
Singh.
public school. Wow.
Yes, yeah.
Jeet
Yeah.
Singh was always a bigger star in Japan than Toronto, right? Was he a big star in Toronto also?
He was, but I think he made more money in Japan. So
He was legendary in Japan.
Oh yeah,
especially in the
sure.
70s and 80s. By
Yes.
the time I worked with him, he's a little bit past his prime. Still could draw money and still could perform.
Yeah.
But he's doing more to get his boy into the wrestling than anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. He's again, much like Siki, a big deal in the Greater Toronto area. Especially they live in Milton, which is just outside of Toronto. So like he's got that's where the school is that's named after him. And at one time, I know they were considering Tiger for the Order of Canada, which is our nation's highest honor. So we had a lot of well-respected guys here, and I was just fortunate enough to work with them, train with them, and I couldn't ask for anything better.
A little known tidbit is Stan Hansen got his style from Tiger Jeet Singh.
I sat with Stan actually, and we talked about Tiger on a WrestleMania bus junket going from the hotel to, I want to say might have been Trish Stratus's introduction somewhere, her or Beth Phoenix, and we had talked about Tiger, and yeah, he had remembered Tiger fondly. I don't think he said that though.
Yep, Stan told me one time that he got the perpetual motion from Idea, not the style, but the way Tiger would come out in that frenetic motion. How Tiger would come out, he go all over that stuff. That's where Stan got the idea. Of course, he did it with the bull rope. But he saw Tiger do it. He thought, man, that would be great if I could do that. But then Stan added a little bit. He said, I'm going to do it the entire match and on the way out. Which takes incredible conditioning, which a lot of people don't realize. But yeah, that was the inspiration for Stan, was Tiger Jeet Singh.
Yeah, Tiger used to do the same thing, but with the sword. He used to.
That's right.
Yeah. And
I worked with him. He had Mr. Wada. Remember the old blonde-haired Japanese heel? Great guy. Had a big place down in Kumamoto, down in Southern Ireland. But they were a great tag team, even in the 90s when they were a little bit long in the tooth. They were still a great tag team.
And you don't have that type of character today, that type of excitement. You've got great athletes today. Fine, I want to say more of a stunt show than a wrestling match on a lot of occasions, but definitely. I think if we had some characters back, I think the last great character died with JBL. I'm trying to think. Has there been anybody since? The wrestling god. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody that. But before that, we had guys like Sweet Daddy. We had guys like the Sheik. We had guys like Tiger, Bruiser Brody. It was a great time to be a wrestling fan.
What was
it's a greater time to be a wrestler now, and that they're making more money.
Oh, they're killing it now. They're making a lot of money now.
They're making a lot of money now. But
what was the difference? I've always found it amazing. Two great territories, Toronto and Montreal. And Montreal tend to create more stars than Toronto. Toronto, had Whipper Billy Watson. They had the Bruno come in, but most of those stars, had gone somewhere and come back.
Exactly.
Created them organically. What was the difference between territories of Montreal and Toronto?
I think Toronto wasn't the traditional definition of a territory, really. Especially during my time and when I was a fan and stuff. They always relied on guys to come in from outside. They relied on the Sheik's booking office out of Detroit. Then they relied on the Crockett's. Then he switched to New York. And so Montreal, on the other hand, they had their whole circuit around Quebec, and the language had to play a part in it too. Like they had TV in Montreal, but most of Quebec didn't speak English. I don't know if that's the case now, but they spoke French. So they like that they're French
Most
stars.
of Oklahoma doesn't either.
Well, speak French.
Most of Canada doesn't
Or
speak
English.
French, but I don't speak French. Most of Canada doesn't speak French, but
I mean, most of Oklahoma doesn't speak English.
but in Quebec, it's French based, and they have their own stars, the Vachons and Lionel Robert and the Leducs and the Vachon. Just Andre the Giant started there when he come from France. So it was different in that way, where they had to make their homegrown stars, and it was a territory. And Toronto, by and large, if you were a local guy and made it big in Toronto, I remember Chris Tolis telling me that, and I researched it, and it looked to be true, that Frank Tunney in particular, if you were a local guy, didn't really want to push you. You had to go out and establish your name elsewhere before he'd bring you.
Ron, that is so true. But that was true of every territory, even here in the States. I mean, guys used to tell me, and my brother both were breaking in Oklahoma. Kid, you want to make money, and John will laugh at it, get out of Oklahoma. He won't make money. You're homegrown, and they don't. Hodge was probably the only one that ever stayed there forever and made money.
Yeah, there was a guy named Jack Lloyd or Dano Shocker. I'm not. Yeah. He was a local guy. He was a Hamilton guy. But a funny story that he told me is he ended up working somewhere in the States, coming back to Toronto, and Frank Tunney thought that he was from the States, so he was paying him apparently more than he used to get. Until some guy stooged on him to Frank, said, "Oh, you mean Jack Lloyd of Hamilton? What?" Yeah. And after that, apparently his payoffs went down.
you mentioned Hamilton. Hamilton was better known at producing stars than Toronto. I mean, go through from the Scott brothers. I mean, Dewey Robinson, Archie, all those guys.
Absolutely.
All those guys from Hamilton. I'd really like to get into a Hamilton wrestling one time.
Sure. Hamilton was known as the factory. They had
the factory, right?
Because it was full of steel factories. So for big guys at that time, the only way to make a living was at the factories, or it turned out pro wrestling. They had two pro wrestling gyms there. One run by a guy called Jack Wentworth, and another one run by Al Spittle. And those were the two big wrestling gyms. And between the two of them, they produced guys like Johnny Powers, the Tolis brothers,
Ivan Koloff,
the Sharps, you name it. It was the factory.
Scott brothers, the Tolis brothers, all guys that I love, man.
Yeah. And both of them, of course, have passed away. I just read an obit on Jack Wentworth.
Why do you think that is? A small suburb like Hamilton can outproduce Toronto?
I think because Toronto's, everybody from Toronto looks down on Hamilton. Matter of fact, people from Hamilton seem to look down on themselves because it's a steel town. Yeah. And
it's a working man's town.
You go by there, and there's
maybe that's the answer right there. It's a working man's town.
That's what it is, and they wanted to get the hell out of there. It's either work at Stelco or U.S. Steel or whatever it was at the time, or wrestle. Toronto was, we had a little bit more going on. Still do.
And Ron, what are you doing now? Are you still training anybody at all? Just riding? What are you doing?
I'm actually retired. Just retired from my shoot job in June. I've been asked several times to come back and train people. I'm not going to do anything in the winter because although it may be cold in Florida, Jerry, feels like 0 degrees Fahrenheit here today, and I don't want to be driving around, or especially it starts snowing here. We got no snow today, but
it's 50 degrees here, and I got to dress in my winter clothes.
But I have considered it. When I get bored of that, I might get the itch again. But at the same time, I think I don't want to get sued for my training is a little bit different, I understand, from what they do today. I don't really understand sports entertainment, I don't think. I understand, I've got a little bit of a handle on pro wrestling. Sports entertainment, pro wrestling I get, though, at least old school pro wrestling. I don't know if I get away with treating students the way I used to. Not that there was anything bad or sinister about it. But, if we train, let's say, in a boxing, they've been asking me to come back to Sully's, for instance. And I went there.
Is Sully still open?
It is. It is. It's touch and go there for a while, a couple of years ago, but it still is. Just training boxers. And they asked, Ron, will you do something? Will you do something? And I went in, I visited them several times. And every time I do go in, I look at what can we do for wrestling here? Well, the ceiling's low. You got that boxing ring is there. I'm about ready to turn 61 next month. But I'm not bumping on that ring anymore. The ceiling is low. We can do mat wrestling and stuff, and we can do psychology.
Oh, wait, the ceiling is low. You're not telling me you can take a backdrop and go to the ceiling, right? Come on now.
You know what? You know what, Jerry? I stopped wrestling for all intents and purposes around 1990. In 2013, though, I did make a comeback for 5 weeks. And I hadn't wrestled in between then. And it was for Emile Dupre. He had phoned me, said, Ron, I'm thinking of opening up again. Can you help me? And I thought, this is the guy who basically gave me my break. I worked every summer with him, my teenage years. I thought, this would be great. I thought he wanted me to help book the territory, maybe book him some talent. And then, typical promoter. I don't know if you know Emile or not, but I think it's a typical promoter, not just say, well, Jesus, you can still go, can't you? And I said, well, Emile, I haven't wrestled in since 1990, 1988 for you. But then I thought, 30 years to the day on June the 5th, 2013 would have been the 30th anniversary of my very first match. And I thought, what better way to celebrate it than getting in there again? So I quickly said, you know what, Emile, I'll do it. Not only will I come and help you book and help run the tour, I'll work as well. And I remember we had the great Muta sitting in the audience. It was in PEI 2000. I can't remember the month. I want to say it was June, I guess. 2013. We had Muta there, and he brought in a couple of Japanese boys, Sanada and Inaba. And they were learning here. And that was, Emile's territory was always good for that, where, Pogo, I worked with Mr. Pogo, Chono come in when I was there in the early 80s, and we ended up working with him. But I went back and I worked that, and I remember Muta was sitting in the audience. I had a kid working with me, Jeremy Prophet. They said, Ron, who do you want to work with? And I didn't know most of them, but I had seen this Prophet guy, and good kid, well-built kid, and I knew he wouldn't kill me, and I knew what he was doing. I said, you know what, I'll work with him. So he, separate dressing rooms still, 2013, but still separate dressing rooms. He come into me and into the heel dressing room, and he says, Ron, what do you want? He said, I want to talk about the match. I said, did they give you the finish? He said, no. I said, well, then get out of here. There's nothing to talk about then. Come back and they give you the finish. He come back 3 times to the same scenario. Finally, they didn't give him the finish either time. One time he come in, he said, Ron, I want to talk to you about the match. I said, they give you the finish? No. I said, okay, here's what we'll do. I was a heel. I was under a hood. So I figure if they want to put you over, here's what we'll do. I'll get the heat on you. You make the big comeback, slam me in the center of the ring, climb to the top rope. I'll come up. You go for a sunset flip. 1, 2, 3. Now get out of here. Way he went. He was happy. If he didn't come back again, I said, now what do you want? He said, they want to put you over. No problem, because I can't remember if we're going to change the whole thing. I'll get the heat on you. You make the big comeback, slam me in the center of the ring, climb to the top turnbuckle. I'll come up with the sunset flip. I'll hold the middle rope, drop my knees on your shoulders. 1, 2, 3, get out of here. So we went out. We called the whole match on the fly. He's getting nervous because Moot is sitting there, right? And all of a sudden, during the match, I have him down. I got him in a headlock, and I can tell he's getting nervous. His feet start to twitch. And he says to me, Ron, I said, what do you want, kid? What are we going to do? Fuck all, kid. I told him. When we'd finished the match, he'd come back to me. He said, oh my God, that was the easiest match I ever had. It got over. It's the simple things that we did. We didn't talk through the whole thing. I couldn't remember that, this day and age anyway. I couldn't remember that my best day, to tell you the truth. The finish, sometimes we screw that up too, but at least I could, if I had a chance to remember anything, it would have been the finish.
Awesome.
Speaking of Hamilton, do you know Silent Brian?
I do.
Please give him my best, and let me tell you why. Because I've got to think about it. I should have brought it out. Greg Oliver sent him a note. So Tiger Jeet Singh and Tiger Ali Singh were in Japan with us. Well, Silent Brian was there too. Well, I had my rope. I had my rope one day, and I thought I'm gonna rope him. So I was sitting there trying to rope him. One time in the parking lot, as you do, because I have a rope. So I asked Greg, I said, Greg, see if he remembers me trying to rope him. So he sent me a signed poster from that tour. You know what? I'm going to get it. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah. Do you know Silent Brian, Jerry?
I don't know Solid Brian. No.
He was a deaf mute, couldn't speak, but he would write notes back and forth. He would pass notes. And
okay. All right. You're gonna love this.
Go ahead, John.
I'm gonna cover up what he wrote. So there's Ali Singh.
Yes.
Me, Silent Brian, and there's what he wrote me. If you can read that.
Yeah, Silent Brian in the Hood, the Asian killer.
So he remembers you, John.
He remembers me. Yeah.
Are you sure that wasn't Jerry who wrote that?
How great is that? He still had a laminated poster he sent to me, which is so cool that he did this for me. I'm telling you, this is my most prized possession now. I've got it hanging up in my office right here.
Yeah.
But he goes by Silent Mackey also.
Yeah, I was just telling Jerry while he went to get the poster that he was a mute and he used to pass notes back and forth.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, the best part was he would look at me and he would go like this and he'd go, you, and this is bullshit. Like bullshit. But if you wanted to scream at me, he'd point at me like this and he'd do it like this. Like that. It was so fun.
He knew you well, John.
Oh my God, I had so much fun with Silent Brian.
Yeah. Tiger T sent me this note. Used to take him on lunch.
This is 30 years later. He sent me this note. That's all. This is the greatest guy ever. I love
Silent
Brian.
I understand he's still living in Hamilton, doing well. I haven't seen him myself in many years, but he's my friend on Facebook. So he is on Facebook, John.
Maybe we could have him on the podcast. It'd be a good conversation, huh?
You better learn your sign language.
Let's hear it. You were evil. You were evil.
Ron, thanks so much, man. I'm looking forward to July at Waterloo, Iowa, at the Dan Gable Museum, the Tragos Says Hall of Fame inductee, Mr. Ron Hutchinson with one H. And that's for all you Texans. That's for all you Texans out there.
One H too.
Hey, Jerry, I'm going to tell the same thing Silent Brian told me. I'm going to tell you.
Thank you, guys. I'm looking forward so much to see you all in Waterloo.
Thanks, Ron.